Andy Poland will be speaking, Judy Robertson. There's even a band that used to be, I guess, Mormons, or like a Christian band called Adams Road. I think Jim Robertson, the founder of Concerned Christians, might be there. So just all kinds of things. And I'm sure somewhere around the lobby or hanging out will be this guy we're going to talk about in a second, or have on, Jeff Durbin. So Pastor Jeff Durbin of Apologia Church, we'll probably see you there August 5th and 6th, won't we?
Yeah, no, I'll be there. I was originally booked as a keynote speaker, but then they were able to get Sandra Tanner to come. So, and, if you're going to get bumped by anybody at a conference like this, definitely want to see Sandra Tanner.
Hey, that's something that could go on your resume, like once replaced by Sandra Tanner.
If it wasn't for Sandra Tanner, I would have been a keynote.
Yeah,
that's right. Once I could have spoken until I got bumped by Sandra Tanner.
Almost was the keynote. So I think it's great, man. I think it's wonderful, and but I know you'll be there, and you've worked a lot. So someone who doesn't know, Jeff, I know you've worked with Concerned Christians. What do we want to tell people that don't know who they are or what they do?
Well, Concerned Christians was started by Jim and Judy Robertson a long time ago. They in the early beginnings of it, he's an ex-Mormon, she's an ex-Mormon, and they spent a lot of really great time just on the ground and equipping Christians to talk to Mormons, and also just doing a lot of outreach. And over the last 15, 16 years that I've been at the temple in Mesa, there's been two other primary ministries that are consistent, and really the only ones that are consistent would be James White's Alpha and Omega Ministries and Concerned Christians. They do a lot of speaking across the country. Judy Robertson and I spoke at a conference together on Mormonism, so they do that kind of stuff. I've done a lot of their equipping classes and training classes at Concerned Christians. They do a lot of training there in-house. They do a lot of Mormon support groups at Concerned Christians, ex-Mormon support groups. And a matter of fact, I didn't realize Andy does a radio show, and he interviewed me on one of his shows, and I didn't really put it all together until he said it on the show, that one of the nights that I was teaching at Concerned Christians on the Trinity, he walked in the door as a Mormon, and I was there the first night. When he came to Christ, I was there, and then the next night he came in, I taught him a class on just, understanding your faith and defending the faith. And so it was neat I got to see, I was kind of able to see that process of him coming out of Mormonism, coming to Christ. So he's a great guy. He's a solid guy.
Yeah, and they do a podcast, the one you were interviewed on, and it's called Out of Mormonism is the name of the podcast, and they have some really awesome guests on there, and it's just a wonderful tool and resource for people trying to come out of this, and they're right there in Mesa, right there in the heart of it, and we're excited about this conference. So what do you think about the title, Jeff? Should Christians be concerned about Mormonism? Thoughts on the theme?
Well, yes. That's my answer. Yes. So I'm sure we could just skip the whole conference right now, just go off. Yes, we should. I don't know. I guess I am very glad they're doing this. I'm happy to see that people are keeping this in front of people. It seems to me, it seems to me that there's sort of it seems like a dying down of a kind of a fervor or a fire to reach people who are LDS. It may perhaps have something to do with the fact that the Mormon Church is a little less strict doctrinally, that there's a shift going on even in their own apologetics and even in how they approach, getting the word out about Mormonism. And so it's just trying to make it look very Christian, very soft, very dumbed down. There's not such finely drawn lines. And so I do like this, should we be concerned? Yes, absolutely, because nothing's shifted theologically on their doctrine of God or Christ or salvation. So absolutely we should.
The dying down, the fervor is on the part of the LDS, you said. Is that correct?
No, I think on Christians.
Oh, because but it's the LDS church that is less dogmatic about some of their distinctives? Yeah,
well, it just seems like if you're on the street, and that's kind of what I know. I mean, I guess when I make these comments, I'm not making them just kind of guessing. I mean, like on the street, talking to hundreds of Mormons. The difference in conversation from 1996 when I first came out here to 2011, the difference in conversation it's stark. I mean, it's not. It used to be you talk to someone that's LDS, they knew what they believed, they knew there were finely drawn lines, they were willing to go to try to take you to task on passages. They kind of knew their way around to try some basic Mormon apologetics arguments. Whereas today, it's a lot more on the subjective side of, I've prayed about this, I know, and they've always done that, but now it's more or less like, well, you're fine. I mean, we think you're like I have a clip online on YouTube. I was talking to a couple at the temple last year. My son was with me, and this couple, he was a returned missionary. I mean, he would not draw the lines. I had to draw them for him. And he would say, no, we would never do this to you. We don't think you're wrong, kind of a thing.
Well, I was like, that's what I meant. It's the LDS where the lack of fire is coming from.
Well, he's saying their lack of distinction, then evangelicals are like, oh, well, maybe they don't need to be evangelized as much. Yeah. And Jeff, I just want to point out what you did was wonderful. The show's title today is The Past, Present, and Future of Anti-Mormon Apologetics. And you just laid that out. You just talked about the difference from 96. So now, Jeff, you are truly a master. I am very impressed. You just tied your comments in with the theme show. Did you know you did that?
Well, I have my own radio show now too, so I have to learn how to do that.
Okay, hey, well, let's let Jeff. Okay, Jeff, go ahead. You got a minute. Tell us about your radio show.
Oh no, I didn't know.
No, Jeff, that was masterful as well.
In the same studio as you, it's called Redemption Radio, and it's a heavy focus on reaching people who are struggling with a drug and alcohol addiction, but also people who are dealing with grief and trauma and things like that. And so it's just a show trying to apply, kind of the same things that the same things you talk about all the time, which is incredible and awesome and is necessary in our culture. Just try to take, the truths of Scripture.
We're having a show. It's the past, present, and future of Anti-Mormon Apologetics. We have a special guest, Jeff Durbin, pastor of Apologia Church. Jeff, take us right with that topic or that phrase, anti-Mormon. It's a bit controversial. Why?
Yeah, well, I like that. It's just a kind of just an irony that you're using in that way. Just Mormons see Christians like us that want to engage them and want to talk about what they believe and try to critique Mormon theology. They refer to us as antis, and it's kind of a part of the Mormon culture that anybody who critiques their religion or sort of like comes on the offensive, with them is anti. And so any literature that critiques Mormon theology and tries to see it in light of Scripture and compare and contrast is anti-Mormon. If you go to the temple and you're handing out tracts, or if you're out there to minister to them and to evangelize them, they immediately label you as anti-Mormon. I mean, that's just what you are. You're an anti. I guess it's a common theme, though, and it's not just unique to Mormonism. I mean, if you talk to someone that's a Catholic and you've dedicated your life to ministering to Catholics and you're trying to reach them, they'll refer to you as an anti-Catholic, and it's a common thing. I mean, it's not, like I said, just unique or it's specific to Mormonism.
Do you engage them on that and say, well, I guess you could call me that, but I'm really just trying to deal with different truth claims? Or how do you respond to that in terms of keeping a relationship with them, which I think you're good at? How do we do that?
Well, I always try to express to them that, we love you. We wouldn't be out here if we didn't care about you. And, I got a wife and 4 kids. I got places I can be right now. I could be hanging out, I'm here because I love you. I mean, who wants to just sit on a Friday and Saturday night and just spend time arguing? And I mean, people like that are just quarrelsome. I'm here because I care about you. I'm not anti-Mormon. If you want to be specific, I guess you could say I'm anti-Mormon theology, but not anti-Mormon as to the person.
And would you say part of what makes much of this difficult too now is that shift where people are being more subjective? It almost becomes, I just had I think the phrase "the burning in the bosom." I had just had this experience, so that as you're trying to get them to move to how their understanding actually coheres with reality is more of a difficult task. Is that true? Or?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the challenge is. And I try to always express to them, well, listen, I understand you've had this experience, and I'm not trying to discount the experience, but the problem is I've had an experience with God. Buddhists have an experience with God. Muslims would claim an experience with God, and so would Jehovah's Witnesses, so would Roman Catholics, so would Rosicrucians, so would Hindus. And so, what are we supposed to do? Just get, a huddle of people who all represent different gods in different ways to God and just, try to see, whose experience sounds best? Is that really, how we find find a good test for truth is, which person has the best experience? No. I mean, there's people that feel all the time that this is right, and I feel that this is right. It doesn't change the truth. I mean, like I say many times, the thief he feels in his own subjective experience that stealing is an okay thing. He likes it. He feels like it's okay for him to do. He's settled that in his mind that it's not the case that that's not mine. It's mine. I'm taking it. And he feels very strongly that that's true, and in his own experience, he likes that, enjoys that. But it doesn't change the very fact that that's my TV. I got the receipt. It's mine. It's not yours. And the truth is, it's mine. You can feel all day long like it's not mine and it's yours. It's mine. And that's, so you can't test things by subjective feeling states. Like, it feels true for me. Well, we could just go down the line and just talk about people who are living in relationships that are improper, and they feel that it's okay for me to live together with my girlfriend before marriage. I feel like I've settled this with God. I feel like, before God we're married, and we feel like that's true. We like that, and it doesn't change the truth. God calls you to live in a different way. He didn't create you for that, and that's disharmonious. The truth is what's in Scripture. It's not just your feeling state.
Yeah, so really this gets back, Jeff, to a question of truth. And this is another reason why, yes, Christians should be concerned about Mormonism. So, Jeff, thanks for joining us, and I'll probably see you hanging out there. And thanks for coming on, and we appreciate your time, Jeff.
Yeah, bless you guys. Thank you.
All right, no doubt. We'll be back in a second where we're going to talk to Andy Poland, actually the guy who sort of runs Concerned Christians, and find out more about this conference and answer the question.
And our show topic today is the past, present, and future of Anti-Mormon Apologetics. Bit of an ironic title. And really what we've had an opportunity to do is talk about a whole lot of different things.
It feels like a whirlwind.
So hopefully it wasn't too confusing to all of you. But really, I mean, we're blessed to hear from a number of people who are just deeply involved in some very important work, sharing the gospel with Mormons. And we're in a state that there's a lot of Mormons, particularly here in the Valley. There's a number of Mormons. And hopefully the show is a means to help you understand better where Mormons are coming from and be able to equip you to speak the gospel to the Mormons in your life. So we heard from Sandra Tanner for a segment. From what I see on the website, so one of the foremost Mormon apologists, I guess is that what you call it?
Or, well, anti-Mormon.
Anti-Mormon.
I put that in quotes.
And the great-great-granddaughter of Brigham Young, as you mentioned.
Exactly. So,
although I heard there's quite a few of those running around, if you know what I mean. Sorry, okay, go ahead.
So anyway, kind of telling her story from coming out of Mormonism and just kind of where things are at in terms of talking about Mormon doctrine, particularly from a Christian perspective. And then as well, we heard from Jeff Durbin, who we've had a number of different times on our show, and just talking a little bit more about what it looks like to share the gospel with Mormons.
Yeah, and now we're going to have Andy Poland, who is, my understanding, I think the correct word is Director of Concerned Christians Ministry. We've been talking about the show as we talk about our title, which is The Past, the Present, the Future of Anti-Mormon Apologetics. As we talk to Sandra, as we talk to Jeff, we have on now with us Andy Poland. So, hey, what's up, Andy? This is Vocab. Yo, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Cool. Thanks for making the time and all that. We've talked a little bit about what Concerned Christians is, so we've caught up on that. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the actual, I don't know if the word's house, but the actual place you guys have in Mesa and sort of the ministry that you do out of there. Because I think it's a great place to go. Just sort of a one-stop shop for Mormon-related resources. What actually do you guys do there, and how can people find out more about I don't know what the word is, house, over there in Mesa?
Well, it is a converted house.
Yeah.
I mean, we use it for our office space, but we have classes that we do on Tuesdays and Thursday nights.
Okay.
On Tuesday nights, it's a Bible study for Mormons coming out of Mormonism. We meet from 7 to 8:30, and we just are studying the Bible. On Thursday nights, we have classes on how to witness to Mormons, and then we have a support group afterwards. The class on how to witness to Mormons is from 7 to 8, and then from 8 to 9, we have just foreign Mormons that get together, and we just talk about issues that we're going through coming out of Mormonism and what it's like, going into biblical Christianity and some of the things that we're struggling with. And so, anyone, we're open. We have a bookstore, and we're open from Monday through Friday from 9 to 5:30. And anyone that wants to come down and find out information, do research, we have a huge Mormon library full of Mormon books. So that if anybody wants to study Mormon history, we have that available to them.
Like Journal of Discourses?
We have the full set of Journal of Discourses, History of the Church, many other Mormon books that if you just are curious, want to know what the old church leaders had to say, we have that information. You can get a hold of it.
Yeah. You guys do some really cool stuff. Yeah. Cool.
The title of our show is The Past, Present, and Future of Anti-Mormon Apologetics. You might say antis in parentheses. All the guests, we've essentially asked some version of the question of, so where do you see things going? What's kind of happening on the ground, and where do you see things going when it comes to sharing the gospel with Mormons, and also how Mormons are elucidating their own doctrine? Be curious to hear what you would say.
Well, I think that this is a very interesting time because the internet has made such a large impact on Mormons today. There are so many resources out there that people can do research from their own home. We do a testimony program called Out of Mormonism, where we have people sharing why they left Mormonism for Christ. And so we podcast that at outofmormonism.com. And so people can go there and hear at the privacy of their own homes people's stories about why they converted to biblical Christianity. And so what I see happening today is that it's becoming, the outreach that we're doing is becoming more, convenient. It's more
accessible,
personal.
Yeah.
It's something that really reaches people at where they're at. And so I see it really making a difference in people's lives, and that it's just amazing when we see people coming out of Mormonism and the testimonies that we hear. It's just so encouraging, and so that's where I see things going right now, is just a more personal relationship that people are starting to have by hearing this new information that's out there.
Andy, Sandra Tanner had commented that Mormons today, and perhaps Christians as well, are less sort of theological doctrinal, that they're glossing over any distinctives. Is that made your job more difficult, even though the information is more readily available?
In a lot of ways, I mean, that is true. But because we're telling our stories about how we came out, the differences become apparent, and it's just something that people may try to sweep under the rug and say that there's not a lot of differences, but in reality, there is a huge gulf between Mormonism and biblical Christianity. And when we tell our stories, it's hard for people to argue with the things that we went through and what we've discovered studying the Bible and comparing that to Mormon doctrines and beliefs. And so, in a lot of sense, they're trying to hide the fact that there are differences, but it just makes it, when people find that there are differences, it makes them actually easier for them to come out, because if the church is saying there's no differences, and people find out that there is, it just makes it that more apparent.
Now, Andy, you just said there's a huge gulf. There's actually a book called How Wide the Divide. Now, I know this isn't the main reason, we said we want to talk to you today, but I'd like to talk to you about this. What do you think about some of what almost look like interfaith kind of dialogues that you have taken place between, say, BYU profs and maybe evangelical pastors, especially it seems in the Colorado and the Utah area? We're talking about the past, the present, and future of anti-Mormon apologetics.
Right.
How does that play in? Because they're saying, well, the divide might not be so wide after all. Thoughts on that?
Well, I get disappointed with Bob Millett and some of the things that he's done.
Or Richard
from the
Mouw
Mormon perspective, defending the church, because he's just trying. He essentially, what he's doing is he's saying that there's not a large difference, but behind the scenes he's saying there is a big difference, and so he's being kind of two-faced. And so, I see that as only lasting for a short time, that eventually, it will come to a point where people realize that there is a difference. And so you can only cover it up with, perfume and makeup for so long, before you really realize that there is a big difference.
What do you think of the Richard Mouw statement where he sort of apologized to Mormons for how mean and nasty evangelicals have been in relation to these kind of things? For those who don't know, Richard Mouw, president of Fuller Seminary. And look, hey, we admit there's some guys we would say these guys are jokers. That's not your word, Andy. That's mine. I don't have a problem saying there's some problems in their work, but still, should a guy like Richard Mouw be saying those kinds of things that he said? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? We're not trying to get you in trouble here, but if you want to ruminate, you can.
The thing that I have, I don't understand where he's coming from in his mindset to apologize. I mean, because I'm coming from my perspective. I was born and raised Mormon, and if he's coming from the perspective that Mormons and Christians aren't that different in their beliefs, then essentially he's doing a backhanded insult towards me because I came out of Mormonism and I'm saying that there is a difference. And so essentially what he would be saying if he's coming from that perspective is, well, you made a wrong decision by leaving Mormonism, that you should have stayed a Mormon.
Wow.
And so I don't know if that's where he's coming from. I think it could possibly be that maybe he just doesn't understand that there are some great differences. I mean, there are a lot of Christians out there that really don't understand what the differences are.
Even presidents of seminaries.
That is the case.
Yeah.
But the first would be terrible because essentially he's just saying that I made a wrong decision.
Well, that fits in with something we've mentioned a couple of times in the show so far, just kind of this watering down of what Mormonism actually is. I mean, there's almost a sense, Mormonism is about good families, good values, and those kind of things, and who wants to be against those things? But I think it's really helpful to hear your perspective and other people who were Mormons and say, well, no, that's here's what it really is, and it is hugely different from biblical Christianity, and we need to wrestle with that.
Right. Well, if we don't make the distinction between what Mormons believed and what we believe, then we have to apologize to Jesus for being critical of the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Well, that's a interesting point to that.
I am so glad you guys are doing this, Andy, and we're excited to see what the Lord is going to do in Arizona through things like this as evangelicals come together, and not just to glad hand with Mormons, but to reach out to them with the changing power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So thank you very much. We'll be praying for you. We encourage people to go, continue on in your work,